Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox, and I'd like to welcome you to the Daily Compliance News. The Daily Compliance News is an offering of the Compliance Podcast Network. March 25, 2019, the Would You Do Business with This Man edition. First off, what do sanctions actually mean? I mean, if the Secretary of State, the Secretary of Defense, the Office of Foreign Asset Control, and all other agencies who had a skin in this game agree to certain sanctions against an enemy of the United States, that being North Korea, and implement those sanctions and require U.S. companies to follow those sanctions. And the next day, the president, by presidential Twitter fiat, overrules those sanctions. How can you trust that sanctions will ever mean anything going forward? It's certainly no way to run a government. Next up, the Sackler family, who has taken a great amount of heat for their pushing of OxyContin as the owners of the of Purdue Pharmaceutical, have recently been tossed out as two potential donors of major gifts to museums. Now they're actively trying to resolve the OxyContin lawsuits around the United States. They are negotiating with states' attorney general and in the 1,600 lawsuits filed against their direct participation in this burgeoning U.S. health crisis. Next up. Sorry, but I should have mentioned all of these articles come from the Wall Street Journal, so this could be the Wall Street Journal edition today as well. But next up, a study found that 95% of all reported trading in Bitcoin is artificially created by unregulated exchanges. This really raises doubts about the market, which has certainly been in steep decline, and really tests you as the investor to really ask whether any of these trades and exchanges investment opportunities have credulity. And finally, today's feature story. Jeff Skilling, who was released from prison last month, is now trying to start up business again. He's holding meetings with former Exxon executives and others, hoping to win backing for a new business venture. So how do you think that due diligence is going to look when your board of directors says, well, we need to see who we're doing business with? And it turns out it was one of the two men who perpetrated, at that time, the largest fraud in the United States. They were, of course, eclipsed by WorldCom and perhaps will be eclipsed by others such as Elizabeth Holmes. But at one point, Jeffrey Skilling and Ken Lay stood convicted of the largest corporate fraud in the United States. Why would you want to do business with him? Well, he certainly paid his debt to society, but is that someone that you could ever trust? And going back to the president and his sanctions, why would you ever do business with someone who has shown what his true colors are previously? I'm back from PodFest Expo 2019. I've got a lot of great new ideas around the podcast and the Compliance Podcast Network. Stay tuned for them all. This is Tom Fox. If you have any ideas for the Daily Compliance News, please feel free to email me at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. I'd love to hear from you. As you may know, we've had several new offerings on the Compliance Podcast Network. One of those includes Popcorn and Compliance, where Jay Rosen and I take a look at compliance through the lens of movies, both current, contemporary movies, and classic movies. Also premiering in December. And finally, Mary Shirley and Lisa Fine have premiered their new podcast, Great Women on Compliance. I hope you will check that out. It's a great podcast series. We have several other offerings that are in production that will go live hopefully in Q1 of 2019. I hope you will check back to see the offerings on this Compliance Podcast Network.